Okay, so now that your prints are finished and dry, it's time to display them. How are you going to display them? We looked at a variety of different ways to display prints, and the first thing you're going to probably do at some point is mount your work. You're going to mount it on a different colored piece of paper. Yellow looks really good with purple, so I am going to use yellow, and I've trimmed off all the extra purple that's around, and I made sure that I cut it nice and straight. If you're worried about cutting straight, bring it to me and I will cut it on my cutting board. And so this curled up a little bit. I'm going to put a frame of glue on the back, and ink, when you get the wet glue on the back of the paper, the ink gets wet again, unfortunately. So you need to be careful with your hands and fingers not to get ink on your hands, wet ink on your hands, and then touch something. So like I said, that wet glue on the back of this purple paper, it's going to make the purple paper moist or wet, and then this ink is going to get wet again. So it's dry, but once that glue gets on the back, it gets wet again and it gets on your hands. So far, I haven't gotten any on my hands. So what I would do is I would glue this down onto a yellow piece of paper, not right in the middle because that's going to waste a ton of paper. Put it over to one edge, leave some edge of the yellow around it, and then bring it to me and I will trim it on my cutting board nice and straight. And so now it's trimmed on my cutting board, so I have this nice yellow frame around it. I could leave it like this, or I could mount it again on another paper, on a black paper, so that I can then put my name on it and take credit for my work. So I have these name tags created. They're not cut neatly, so I would go through and cut around the frame so that it looks neater. I'll leave room. Alright. So maybe I'm going to put this in the middle. So you need to look and see what you have. If I turn it this way without wasting paper, will I have enough paper? I will. So I was originally putting it this way, and that's going to leave me a lot of waste. But if I turn it this way, this is a better piece of paper that somebody else could use. I actually could use it for my other print. So by turning it this way, I only have to use one paper instead of two. So I'm going to flip this over. Again, the ink might be getting a little wet from the wet glue because my glue isn't dry yet, so I need to be careful. Flip this over. Try and make sure this is even with this, even spacing. Take a permanent marker because this is going to be displayed, and so I want it to look nice, and so I don't want to write my name so sloppy that people can't read it. And then you would write your classroom teacher's name, and then I would glue this down. Again, a frame of glue, and try and put that right in the middle. Okay, now I have the second print, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to trim off the edges of the print and then mount it on a colored paper and then mount it again onto a black paper for display. I don't know if you can see a little bit of it, but you can see the ink is wet here where you can see my glue line underneath. That will dry and go away, but right now it's wet because the glue is wet. Okay, and then you would take this to me and I would trim this around this for you on my cutting board so it's nice and straight. You don't have to hand cut it. Another frame of glue. I'm going to line up the top and the sides to make sure they're even amount of black space. Get another label. Use my best handwriting. Okay, and then you would bring this to me and have me cut on my cutting board down the side here and down the side here, so I'll have a little sliver of black that would be recycled. Or if you wanted, you could leave it like this and only do one name tag, but I would probably put it over to the right hand side, bottom right. That tends to be where artists sign their artwork or put a tag on. It's usually on the bottom right, so this one would come off. And then I would cut these, and then you would put these on the drying rack to dry, and then we'll display them in the hallway. Another way that you could display your art is I had stamped this leaf on this size white paper, and it just was boring. So I cut the leaf around the leaf out, and I mounted it onto this size magenta paper, and then, so I glued it down, then I cut around the magenta paper. Then I took the magenta and this print and glued it down onto purple paper that you see there. Glued it down, cut around it on the purple paper, and then took that and glued it back down onto magenta paper. So I get this nice, interesting effect to change it. So, you know, just a print simply mounted can look beautiful, but you probably are going to need to add something to it to zhuzh it up. And so then I would be ready to mount this. So I would put a frame of glue, and then I would get another name tag, and I would mount it down here, bring this to me, and I'll trim that off for you. And that's how you could display that piece. And then if you have like an overall large piece that's stamped that you want to mount, you're going to need to get the colors that you want, and you'll probably need me to trim them down for you. So I've trimmed this blue down on my cutting board for you, and to match this. And so then you would do a frame of glue. And remember that the ink is going to get wet again and get on your hand, so be real careful. Then I need to find a black paper that's big enough, and that's not big enough. I'm choosing black because I printed blue and black leaves. There's nothing that says that these have to be mounted on black paper. I just like the black. This was black, this was black. I like that. I like the look of it. I think it looks nice. It's traditional, but you don't have to. You could choose a different color for your back mounting paper. So then we do a frame of glue on this. Mount this. I'm looking at the spacing of this black here and the spacing of the black there so that it's even, it's not crooked. Okay, now I could choose to take a label and put a label hanging, and the labels can hang off. It's okay if they hang off. So if I want this to be horizontal, I might have to make my label hang off the side. I could do it vertical and then my label would fit, but I do like it horizontal better. That's just my preference. You might like yours vertical. You're the artist, you decide. So I'm going to trim off this label. Now we have a bigger space of black at the bottom than at the top, and that's a traditional technique as well. A lot of times artwork will be mounted higher and there will be this space at the bottom, and that space is usually left for a label. And so I'm gonna go ahead and leave this here, leave that thickness. And then this time I won't do a frame of glue. I'll put a line of glue across the top of the label, and I will label it hanging off the black underneath the blue. And then you're going to bring this to me, and I'm going to trim that off so that this space is even with this space. So there I have my finished print mounted neatly for display and labeled for display. All right, I want to show you another way that you could display your prints to get them ready for display. You could, if you have like 3 prints, you could make a tri-fold piece of paper where it would stand up for display. So what you're going to need to do is come see me with your prints, and I will cut a paper that is taller than your prints and longer than your prints. And then what you're going to do is space them out evenly. So like put the one in the middle and then look at the black space around your pieces so that you don't have one up high and one down low, that they're even. And then you're going to put a frame of glue on the back of the prints. Now remember, if you did printing ink, the ink does get wet again from the glue on the back, so be careful. And you're going to glue these down. And these are not the subject matter that we talked about. These are some leftover prints that I had from 3rd grade. And you're going to glue these down. You want to glue them down quickly so that the glue doesn't start to get wet on you. And then what you're going to do is you're going to fold. You're going to fold this one over, and you want to kind of match up these sides here. You want to fold right down the middle of this black space. And you want it to be straight, so line up the edges and crease, then open it back up so it doesn't get glued shut. And then this one you're going to fold back. So you're going to fold middle of the black space and open it up. And so this creates a trifold that will stand up for display, which is also a nice way to display your prints. You'll obviously need to write your name and the day you have art on the back of your work. And then you'll probably put this on the drying rack to dry, but make sure you get your creases on there. You can see I didn't get this crease right in the middle of the black. So it's not the end of the world. I could recrease it, but then I have 2 creases there, so I'm just going to leave it as is. And then when I would display it, I would display it standing up on its own. Okay, and then another way that you can display is hang multiple prints from a string. So you're gonna want to get your prints and glue them onto a slightly bigger paper. You want to pick a color that will complement your work. So this purple or magenta color really matches the magenta color in my fish. So you're going to come see me, and I'm going to help trim some paper that's the right size, and you're going to put a frame of glue on the back of each. And you're going to put a frame of glue on the back of each print and glue them to the center of the papers. And you want to glue these and look at this space around. So if I move this, make sure it's even, that you don't have it glued near the top. You might need to hold this down for a little bit, because since it's a print, it might not be flat. It might be kind of wavy like this one, so you might have to hold it down. And you're going to do that for each of your pieces. So if you have, obviously, to display these prints this way, you would need more than one. Always put it on the back of your print, not on the paper itself, the frame itself, because you don't know how big your print is going to be. Okay, and now you want to hang these from a string. So what you're going to do is get some yarn from me, and you're going to determine what order you want to hang them in. So this is going to be my top one, this is going to be my middle one, this is going to be my bottom one. So for my top one, I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to cut a piece of yarn and tape it to the back. This is the back of the work, so it's okay that it's masking tape. Then I'm going to cut another piece of yarn. I don't want to cut it too long, or this will be a really big, long piece of art. Lay this down, and then 2 more pieces of masking tape. I want to make sure that I lay the yarn down in the middle, and then scoot this down. And my last one, piece of yarn. If you have any leftover yarn, give it back to me, please. Find the middle of the papers, and then 2 more pieces of tape. Okay, make sure you write your name on the back of one of these pieces if you've taped them securely together. Then you can hang this, so you can hang from the yarn, and then these will dangle below. And it's hard to see how these will dangle, but that's how they will hang, and it's a nice way to display your